Hi guys, Ronnie here. Today I want to talk about Zwift. Now in the previous season I wasn't very keen on indoor training because I wasn't in Zwift yet, and I really tried to do as much of my training as possible outside, even if it meant riding in some truly horrible conditions. This year, however, or from September basically, when my semester started, I decided to get on Zwift to be more effective with my training. I really wanted to try it out, and I have to say it's completely transformed my look on indoor training. It's quite a lot of fun with Zwift. It's very effective, and you can do much more than you could otherwise do with the standard indoor training setup. Despite this, however, there are some drawbacks that I would like to see fixed in the future from Zwift. So I broke down these drawbacks into 3 different categories depending on which mode you are using Zwift in. So let's start with freeride mode. So for freeride mode, I'd like to point out that I'm using the Elite Drivo Turbo Trainer, Smart Trainer. This is the top of the line model from Elite, and it's excellent at doing freeride mode. However, there are some issues with Zwift itself. So my first issue is the trainer resistance. Now, I have tried many trainer difficulty settings within Zwift, and the problem with each of them is depending on the gearing on your bike, it's going to be very unrealistic, and that's mainly in the downhills. Because, well, for example, when I descend at 80 km per hour from Vitopia KOM, I'm still basically in the big ring, middle of the cassette, while doing 80 km per hour, which is very far from what the real life situation would be. So this is one thing I'd like to address, because it's a shame you have all those gears in, you can't really choose your cadence sometimes, and the resistance in this way seems to be a bit unrealistic. On the hills, on the uphills, those are quite well judged depending on, again, your trainer resistance or difficulty setting. And the bonus of adjusting your trainer difficulty setting is, for me, for example, I use my time trial bike most of the time on the trainer, and it has a 54 tooth ring on it. So I'm a bit limited in terms of climbing gears, but I can adjust it so I can spin up basically everything. Another issue with the trainer resistance settings coming from Zwift, and I think this one is a bit more serious, is how the resistance actually changes. Because in real life it is a combination of your speed versus your gearing and your gradient or your outside resistances. And in Zwift, it really seems to be very fixed on the gradient, because there are some parts, the S's for example, or some slight uphills, where you get a sudden change in gradient, but if you power through, you don't really get, or you don't really experience any change in speed, and despite that, you have to basically shift up 2 or 3 gears just to keep spinning your cadence, and that's definitely not how it works in real life. So I think this part of the algorithm could be much improved as well. Another thing I would like to see upgraded is the selection of roads and courses. Now currently there are 3 courses, and the Richmond course is quite limited to just the UCI circuit. Then we have Vitopia and London. Those are expanding slowly, but still I think in the London course, that's my favorite by the way, I can get through all of the roads multiple times in various different combinations in 3 hours. Which is fine for most people, but if you want to do some endurance training, then yeah, it can get a bit repetitive. And the same goes for the Vitopia course. So there, again, in 3 hours you can basically go through the whole thing, all in every direction. So yeah, I'm sure there will be improvements in the future on this, but as of right now it's not perfect. And then finally, talking about the course schedule, sometimes I think it doesn't really make sense, because it can get, again, quite repetitive if you're training every day and then you get basically 5 days of Vitopia in succession. Well, I think it could be a bit more varied. Of course, there are ways to change and choose your own course, but if no one else is running it, that takes a bit away from the experience. The second mode of Zwift is workout mode, and arguably this is the mode that I'm in, I would say, for 90% of the time. And for a serious racer or rider preparing for an event, this is going to be the most important. Now, there's a great selection of workouts in Zwift. There's no problem with that. You can create your own ones. You can download custom workouts from the internet. There are plentiful options. I would like to point out that the ones integrated in Zwift, most of these multi-week courses, they are really aimed at beginner riders. So the amount of training stress you get there is not going to help you too much if you are a bit more of an advanced rider. On the other hand, there's the Hunter Challenge course, and I think that's a bit overcooked. I don't know who this Hunter was, and I definitely don't consider myself a crybaby or, you know, soft rider, but some of those workouts are just very close to being uncompletable if your threshold is set up right. Speaking of threshold, I think a big problem of some of those workouts is they are based purely on your FTP. And that's fine for workouts in the region of the threshold or below that. But for VO2 and sprint based or sprint focused workouts, it's going to be a problem, because, well, I'm no beginner rider, and recently I've boosted my FTP by something in the region of 20 watts. Well, the problem is that now the sprint intervals I have to do have increased by more than 100 watts, and my sprint power hasn't increased by 100 watts, so that's a problem, and same for the VO2 intervals. So I'd like to see a bit more advanced integration of your actual power curve, because the Zwift does process a power curve that you've achieved during your training rides on Zwift. So I think really these workouts should take that into consideration. Another thing that I think is a bit of a missed opportunity here is not having any way to manually adjust the resistance of your trainer. The reason why this is a problem for me in particular is, as I said, I'm on a Driva trainer. It's excellent for freeriding, but quite poor at doing these workouts, and mainly in the erg mode setting. That's just completely unusable, totally rubbish. So in order to use my gears effectively, I would really like to have an option to manually adjust the trainer resistance, because yeah, I can use my time trial bike that's got a 54, a 58 to front single ring on it, but then if I put my cross bike on the trainer with a 42 ring on it, then there's not enough resistance because the gear is too small. So this is a serious drawback. Another thing that I've noticed, but it's in no way important, it's just a bit irritating, is the leveling system in Zwift. And if you pay close attention, then you will see that when riding in freeride mode, you can get experience points for every kilometer traveled. That's okay. In workout mode, you get experience for every interval you complete successfully. So that's okay. The problem is that if you're a faster rider, you travel a lot more distance during those intervals than the points you're getting, so you're leveling slowly or much slower than you would otherwise in freeride mode, and that doesn't really make sense because arguably in workout mode you're doing more progress in terms of your fitness and as a rider. So yeah, that's another thing that could be improved. Okay, and finally, race mode. Now this is arguably the most fun but also the hardest part of Zwift. And before the recent updates, the drafting model in particular was, in my opinion, quite off, and it strikes you really hard if you're a lighter weight, a lower power rider like I am. The thing is that due to my FTP, I have to race in the A category, and the problem is mainly in the flat courses, because, for example, from my own experience, I know that even if the bunch at the real race is traveling at 50, even 55 km per hour, if I'm in the middle of the bunch, I can get away with doing 200 watts and it's perfectly fine, I'm in the bunch. On Zwift, however, for some reason, you don't really get any kind of drafting benefit. You almost have to do the same amount of power as you would do outside of the bunch. Although this was the case in the first couple of races I've done. However, I've done a race just today and I'm not really sure if it's down to the update, but it seemed much more realistic. So yeah, perhaps they've improved this already, although it was a bit sketchy previously, but other than that, the race simulation is quite good. One thing I would also like to note are the categories. Now, as I said, I'm kind of obliged to race in the A category, and I would really feel bad if I sign up to a B category race. The problem with A category, however, is there is no upper limit in terms of FTP, and yeah, it really makes for hard racing on those faster, less hilly courses because of the huge total power difference that I can have compared to some heavier riders. And then, being that unlimited, I can encounter basically any pro that decides to sign up. So yeah, it makes for really hard racing, although at least I can push myself really hard. Okay, I think this pretty much sums up the problems that Zwift currently has, but I'm pretty sure that at the rate they're improving the software and the game, they will be addressed really soon, particularly if you consider how fast it is gaining popularity. And that's no real wonder. I think it's the best piece of software currently available for riding. It has definitely transformed my way of thinking about indoor training. Now, if you'd like to see more about the actual equipment that I use, or the bikes that I use for racing, like for real, outdoors, then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's off the day. Thanks for watching and see you next time.